Welcome back to another edition of Zero Blog 30. Today we have two rounds of the magazine. Round number one, two generals actually made some disparaging remarks about some troops and their cleaning habits and their living habits and their ability to adult. And Katie doesn't usually get fired up about too many like straight up military stories. She immediately texted, "Fuck that guy."
Yeah,
I was
fuck
like,
these
wow,
guys.
that's a strong reaction from old Katie. Round number two, we're going to talk about a new survey that came out about Americans and their views on a national service requirement for 18 to 22-year-olds, where they'll have to serve at least 18 months. We got some thoughts on that. Well, I don't know what their thoughts are. I want to talk to them about their thoughts on that. And all that today is going to be fun. I'm not going to say an ad read. I'm going to do it later. We're going to do ad reads because I listen back, friends. I listen back. And the first like 6 minutes that you guys been listening to on podcasts are like ads. So I'm not going to do it at the top today. I'm going to let you have a little bit of a break. And we're going to talk about something that really blew my mind. I caught up last night on Real Housewives of New York, and I need to talk to somebody about it because it's preposterous what's going on. So, Cons, you said you watch, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Katie has a little bit of a vibe. Well, there's this couple, and one of the couples, I forget the guy's name, but he is on, this is the situation that he's in. He and Kate, let me get your thoughts on this as a woman with a significant other. This guy has purchased 3 round-trip flights for 1 year to Vietnam. He's going to Vietnam. He'll be in country.
I'm already out. Absolutely
He'll be in country
the fuck not.
for 36 hours. He's flying all the way, which is like a 20-hour flight, 24-hour flight, something like that. I think because they're having problems. They've been talking about they didn't have sex for 18 months. She thinks that he's just going to collect some airline miles because he gets like 60,000 airline miles or something like that. That dude's going to fuck, right?
Yes. Yep. And probably in the worst, most immoral ways possible. Yeah, absolutely. No, fuck that. No.
And I understand like open relationships can be a thing. Like people can do that and everybody's entitled to their own proclivities. But my goodness, a trip to Vietnam. Cons, what would Alex do if you were like, hey, I'm actually good? Because they have young kids. Their kids are about Cash's age. What would Alex's response be like if I'm going to fly to Vietnam for 4 days?
I mean, first of all, she got annoyed. One time, I was lazy about booking a flight somewhere. So it ended up I paid more than I should have. And there was a connection. And that was for just a weekend trip in the United States. And she was furious. So if I said, hey, yeah, I'm just going to go to Vietnam for 4 days across the other side of the world for 4 days. No, that would not go over well. This woman, you're talking about Jessel and her husband. I think his name's Pravit. Let's take a step back. Okay. This season's cast of Real Housewives of New York, overall, just an abomination. Let's say you have two women. You have two women who don't want to talk about their private life. What are you doing on a reality show? If you don't want to tell me about your private life, what are you doing?
You're talking about Jenna, right?
Well, Jenna, and then the Uba, the model.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
who is one of the prettiest people I've ever seen.
Oh, she's gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
She's gorgeous. And then you have someone, what I didn't realize when I really dove into these women, and it gets a little easier, I think, after you're 35.
I wasn't even prepped that we're going to talk about this.
I'm prepared, bro. I'm prepared for Roni. I mean,
we need a New York. We need a Housewives group chat, not ZBT
we really
related.
Should. We really should have a Housewives podcast or discussion, something. This season's cast of Roni really just makes you miss the days of Turtle Time, of Ramona, the Countess, Dorinda making it nice. I mean, I could go on, but you have these two women who don't want to talk about their private life. You have Jenna, who I didn't realize, and then I looked into, most of these women, they're like 35 to 42, and then Jenna Lyons is in her 50s. By no stretch am I saying that that's old, but she's at a different part in her life. And it felt very forced that she was doing the show. It's almost like someone came to her and said, hey, Jenna, I think you should do Real Housewives of New York for one reason or another. It didn't seem to fit. That was a long way of saying, yeah, chaps, I don't agree with this man going to Vietnam. And I think they had to conjure up.
I love that recap. That recap was great, Cons.
They needed to conjure up storylines because as you went through the season, there was just nothing there. It was all very forced. These women have loose ties to one another. And when you are going and stacking up against arguably one of the best franchises in the Housewives realm with Roni, seasons 5 through 8 or 5 through 9, it's just a tall task. No. So this season was just an utter disappointment. Sorry.
Everybody's an abomination on that show. They're all irredeemable. I don't like a single one of them.
I'll just say this. I'm just going to circle it back to the fucking in Vietnam part. I've hit a point now where I swear to God, I'm like, dude, if you want to go to the Bunny Ranch in Vegas where they have super strict rules and they're like, have fun, man. Like, I just don't give a fuck. Is that bad?
Wow.
That's probably bad.
No, that means that spark is still there. If you don't give a shit at all, the spark is still there.
I'll say this now, having been married now for, a year and a half, what I realize is, marriage comes in all different shapes and sizes. Whatever works for somebody, I'm not here to judge. If it works for them, for him to fly out of Vietnam 3 times a year for 4 days, 5 days at a time.
Well, not if she thinks he's doing it for airline miles. If she knows why he's going, then
I don't think there's no way an intelligent woman is like, yeah, he's going because he loves those miles, man. He loves them.
Yeah. No.
But I could see this is the only plausible thing that it's not sex related to me because he has twins. If you cannot stand your significant other, the only way that you cannot be responsible for text and things like that, you're on a flight from New York to Vietnam. So you get at least 24 hours twice where there's no contact whatsoever because you're in the air. You can't do anything.
And of course, she's taking care of the babies while that's happening. Well, isn't it nice to be a man, all of you?
Well, they got like 2 nannies, so I don't know if she's really struggling with that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, when you have some money. Second story I want to talk about, another embarrassment. Jada Smith, she needs to stop. I've never seen somebody embarrass their husband or ex-husband in that way when she still supposedly cares about him.
Yeah, again, I think this is a situation where
well, let's break it down for the listeners first. What are a couple of the things that have come out? Yeah.
All right. Well, this is the one that came out this week. She took shots at Chris Rock, and Chris Rock has been put through enough by the Smith family, but some of it might be his fault a little bit if it's true, because Jada said this week that about a year and a half ago, Chris had contacted Jada because he heard that Will and Jada were separated and getting a divorce. So he swooped in and tried to take Jada out on a date. If that part is true, Will Smith should have punched him in the face. Not just slapped, but I'm talking an absolute mollywop.
So it was more than just the alopecia digs that he took at her. It was that he was hitting on. And then she also came out and was like, we've actually been separated for like 10 years. And she also came out and was like, Tupac used to hit on me. And she also and it's all because she has a book coming out this week that's supposed to be pretty good. I think it's called
he couldn't satisfy her. He didn't satisfy her sexually.
She spills all the tea on their relationship, and a lot of it looks really tough on Will Smith, who just seems like this affable, chill dude. So yeah, she's putting him through the ringer, and everybody else who's ever messed with her or bothered her is going through the ringer.
It's so tough to see too, because we all grew up with Will Smith between Fresh Prince and then all of his blockbuster movies in the 90s. We all, I think, have a special place for Will Smith in our hearts.
There was a time he was the biggest star in Hollywood, you could argue.
You could absolutely make that argument. I mean, there was a stretch of like 3 summers in a row he was putting out just a banger of a blockbuster. And just to see him get treated, you think like he seems, again, I don't know him, seems like a really, to use your word, affable person. So for him to be pushed to the point where he physically attacked another person. And I think when you're that level of celebrity, you've been trained so much on how to act in public. So
you're like a quarterback.
To get to the point where you have no longer control of what you're doing and you are doing something that you know is potentially career suicide, it had to have been pretty bad. So my heart goes out to Will, because I think she's just like, every possible button that she could push seems like she's pushing it with him.
And it doesn't look good on her. There's been no good looks.
Now, as a woman, though, I'm always like, no, everyone's quick to judge the ladies, but you don't know behind closed doors. He could be very annoying. You know, he could be peeing all over the floor, leaving his toenail clippings everywhere, not doing the dishes like he's supposed to. So we don't know. I always like to err on the side of it is the guy's fault somehow. We just don't know.
I think that's society. So when all of society, you don't see very many people defending Jada on this one. And I think it usually goes the other way, where people assume that it's the dude's fault, because realistically, most of the time it is. Like, we're pieces of shit for the most part.
Absolutely.
But I feel like in this one, and Will Smith, you want to talk about the high road? He's basically taking Sherpas on the road. This dude is all over, like, not being a dick back to her in public. He's like, dropping some smiley face emojis and different chats that's talking about him. If I was a woman, Will Smith's available, I am sucking that thing like a golf ball through a garden hose. I would give him and be like, you satisfied the shit out of me. He needs to be gassed up by somebody.
Yeah. I mean, he's been gassed up his whole career, and deservedly so, given all of his success. But you're right, though, what you said about Chris Rock. If it isn't true that Chris Rock propositioned Jada to go out on a date or anything while they were separated, whatever, that's an extreme violation of bro code, and that is not to be ignored. That is terrible. I don't care if you're separated. That's not okay. That's not cool. And I have to imagine Chris Rock was on Fresh Prince, an episode of Fresh Prince. I think they were friends at some point. They had to have been. They were running.
I mean, in those circles, absolutely. Martin Lawrence.
Were boys. Yeah, they were boys at some point. So to do that to somebody who was at some point in your life a friend, not okay in my book.
I completely agree. And if I was Will Smith, I would make sure that Chris Rock had Simply Safe at his house, because I'd be coming through the window. It's still October, but the holidays are coming up fast before your life gets into overdrive with holidays. Protect your home with Simply Safe Home Security. You can get a brand new system today for 40% off. Experts love Simply Safe. It was named the best home security system of 2023, which I think that's got to be like the 8th year in a row that they've got it, because we've been doing these ad reads for a while. We've had partnerships for a while, and every year it comes out that they're the best home security. So it might just be true. Simply Safe is a comprehensive protection for the whole home with advanced sensors that detect break-ins, fires, floods, and much more. Plus HD cameras for both inside and out. It's powered by 24/7 professional monitoring with less than $1 a day, half the cost of traditional home security. With the 24/7 lifeguard protection and the smart alarm wireless indoor camera, monitoring agents can speak to intruders, help crime in real time, and they have a powerful technology exclusively from Simply Safe. I wish that I had the flood protection whenever my house flooded.
True.
8 days before, and when I owned the house for 8 days. So satisfaction is backed by Simply Safe's money back guarantee. Try Simply Safe for 60 days of risk-free. If you don't love it, return the system for a full refund. For a limited time, save 40% on any new system with Fast Protect plan. Visit simplysafe.com/ZBT. That's simply.com. Let's get into round one and talk. Oh, before we get into that, Katie, you wanted to do an update on what's going on in Palestine and Israel.
Yes, I felt like we had a whole episode last week. It'd be kind of weird to just pretend like that's still not popping off over there, especially on the U.S. end, because there's major things happening on that front. President Joe Biden tomorrow, Wednesday, will be making an extraordinary wartime visit to Israel as he seeks to demonstrate staunch support of Israel as it works to eliminate Hamas. But at the same time, he'll also be asking Israel, please ease the humanitarian suffering in Gaza. The U.S. military has selected roughly 2,000 troops to prepare for a potential deployment to Israel itself. And I know that had a lot of people buzzing across social media. The troops are tasked with missions and I feel like every country we go into, this is the exact thing they say. Not a combat thing, just a little bit of medical support, a little bit of advice.
Rolling in a couple $1 billion of aircraft carriers, no biggie. No biggie
Little
at all.
bit of advising. That's all we're doing. Just dipping our toe in the advisory pool. Nothing crazy. These troops, these 2,000 troops will be from every branch. They are not intended to serve in a combat role. No infantry have been put on a prepare to deploy order. But on top of those 2,000 troops, a lot of other troops are also getting sent closer to the Middle East. Like Chap said, aircraft carriers, troops in Europe getting pushed to spots in the Middle East. So the U.S. is at least posturing a little bit to say hey, we're here, we're ramping up support. Israel, in response to the Hamas attacks, has been conducting airstrikes in Gaza. Something I thought was interesting that I didn't know previously, they would go tit for tat back and forth. When Israel would go to bomb missiles on Gaza, they would first send a giant lead round that would hit the top of the building they were about to really try and blow up to alert everyone in the building. It would make a huge thump, but not blow up. And that would let everyone in the building know, hey, we're about to bomb this building. You have 30 minutes to get out. It was like a courtesy tap. Have you ever heard of that? Did you know?
No.
Yeah. So that was something they did. And now that's one of the things they're like, we're not doing that now. We're just bombing. But Israel has been conducting airstrikes in Gaza, a lot of videos of that coming out, and has told civilians to evacuate to southern Gaza. And millions and millions of people were given 24-hour notice, get to southern Gaza or we're not responsible for what happens. Of course, this brings up, what about babies in the NICU? What about people who can't, there's just a lot of us couldn't pick up and just go in that many times. And, a lot of people going back and forth. Meanwhile, Israel says we will allow humanitarian aid into southern Gaza, but if Hamas intervenes, no more. So you guys, we'll let you have your aid, we'll let you have your help. But if Hamas starts fucking with it and is taking it and is whatever and using it for their own ends, that's it. So another thing that I thought was interesting too, did you see any of the reports about the tunnels in Gaza?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
One of the things, that they talk about in the Vietnam War that made it almost impossible to fight some of the guerrilla fighters from the Viet Cong was this huge, intricate tunnel network that was in so many of the villages. And apparently, I don't know how true this is. I don't know, but apparently Gaza is like an anthill or Palestine, and they have just an absolutely massive network of tunnels and defenses that they've been preparing for a long time for something like this. So that'll make things extra difficult for however it
I
goes
did
down.
see one of the Israeli higher ups, their equivalent to the Secretary of Defense, talking about some of the things that they wanted to do besides the large scale bombing. And one of them was going through essentially house by house looking for people. And I was like, that just doesn't work. We've seen it over and over and over again. If you're trying to root people out, I don't know how you do it. I really don't. I don't know if it's possible.
Yeah. And again, too, there's a lot of questioning about, why did Hamas finally attack? Who is behind it? A lot of eyes looking at Iran and some other countries being like, really, motherfuckers? Just a crazy situation. More than 1,400 people in Israel have been killed, and more than 2,800 people overall in both regions have been killed so far. Humanitarian crisis on both sides, and frustrated Palestinian Americans are trapped over in Palestine trying to get out. There are Israeli Americans who were taken into Gaza who are trapped there. At least 30 U.S. citizens died in the attacks in Israel, and many more are unaccounted for. So that's kind of where we're at now. I'm interested to see how Biden's visit goes, if it has any effect whatsoever. I know Blinken and a lot of our other officials are working with the other surrounding countries right now, and a lot of talking going on, but that's just kind of the latest. It's tough though too, because
I feel like we're still catching our breath as a country, as a military, from everything we just did for the last 20 years. I guess it's, technically it's been 2 years now, but even still, it's still very fresh. So I know 2,000 troops is not a very large number compared to what we've done in other conflicts, but still the 2,000 troops, the posturing of what our Navy is doing to be prepared. And granted, Hamas, horrible, need to eradicate them. Completely behind that. A very clear enemy, which I think does help. Nevertheless, the idea that we could then get involved in yet another conflict so soon, it's just, I don't know. You can make the argument, what's the point of the military, I guess, is to protect people. So this is their job, and I get that. But I don't know. It just feels like a lot very soon against a very serious enemy that could potentially have the backing of other massive countries. So this thing could spiral and turn into something that we don't necessarily.
That's always been the fear about the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
Like a conflict in the Middle East. The thing that really bothers me a lot, and you would think that this is another lesson learned from Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm so tired of being in conflicts with government and government leaders and taking it out on the innocent civilians. And you almost feel like if you hear someone speaking about the Palestinian, the children, the women, the non-fighters that need to get out, it's almost like you're villainized for that. And that's something that I really, really don't understand. And the only way to really wrap my head around it is just put it as Islamophobia and racism, really. And you hate that anyone feels that way, and doing both sides is shitty. But really, it's the sovereignty of the states on both sides that is really fucking everything up. The Israeli people are great. The Palestinian people, they need to be protected, and they are families. They have interests. They want to live a full life too. And all of those civilians involved deserve that. And I don't understand why it's divisive to say that. It shouldn't be a divisive thing. We should all cheer for humanity.
Yeah. But that's the update.
So,
and
yeah. And one other thing about, and one thing I want to mention, U.S. got embarrassed on a world stage, like in a big, big way. Secretary Blinken going to Saudi Arabia to try to get another ally quote ally to support what we want to do in the region. And then they didn't show up. Like the prince didn't show up. Their military liaison didn't show up for hours. Blinken waited, they said 7 hours before they came in and told him to come in the next day instead. It's one of the most disrespectful things that I've seen. That's the highest ranking person in the cabinet. To get told you're not 7 hours, like the Secretary of State probably had to go into one of these buildings and be like, hey, can I get the Wi-Fi code so I could do a little bit of work while I wait on MBS?
And that's crazy just because that is because those are the types of people who everybody else moves heaven and earth to meet with them. So the idea that somebody would make that person wait 7 hours, massive slap in the face.
Well, that too Saudi Arabia they said one of the reasons maybe that this attack took place, one of the many, many, not why, but factors people were looking at was that Saudi Arabia had not given full support to Israel, but had started making connections with Israel. Mm-hmm. And that pissed a lot of people off. But when this attack happened, when Hamas did these massacres across Israel, Saudi Arabia voiced their support of Hamas. So they kind of cut it off. So I think they're taking their step in the stand. So saying like, never mind, fuck you guys, we're on the other side. And I think them making him wait was part of that, being like, no, don't get it twisted. Just because we have that like diplomacy going with Israel doesn't mean we're fucking with you. So I don't know. That's Katie. That's Lance Corporal Kate's take as an expert.
No, I think that's a good take. I think it's a good opinion to have. All right, let's move on to actual round number 1. What do we have here, Catherine?
Tale as old as time. Bathrooms full of grime.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was good.
For us all. Base housing should fall. Mold in the barracks.
That's a pretty good song, man.
Thank
Wow, the good case.
you.
And let me
Thank
just
you.
say, your
Just
singing voice sounded like a songbird. I thought that we had a little whippoorwill on the podcast today.
Stop it. Get out of here.
Just gassing each other up. Love it.
That was awesome.
I feel like maybe 10 times a year we have a mold in the barracks episode or base housing or all kinds of things that proven physical issues for the troops and just crushes morale and is just heinous and egregious. And I think, I don't know, I'm sure Army barracks for officers here and there too, and base housing for officers here and there too. But like, I know personally, I saw and stayed in barracks that were so fucking horrendous that we should have never had to stay there. And you don't know it at the time because you're young and dumb and you're like, I guess this is part of it. And it's like,
and you don't want to be a pussy.
And you don't want to be a pussy.
Yeah, you don't want to
like,
complain.
why when my earplugs fell out when I was firing the 50 cal, I was like, don't want to look like a pussy and put them back in. And now my ears thump when I watch the news. Okay.
Yeah.
So mold in the barracks has become an increasingly common problem.
When you watch the news?
When birds chirp and when I watch the news, my ears physically thump like a drum.
Wow.
Wild.
Thanks a lot, 3M.
I know. Thanks a lot.
You pieces of shit.
But
Great
there's a couple of fancy pants fellas saying mold is not the issue. Looking at you, Commander of the 1st Armored Division, he says it's discipline within the Army. Soldiers, Major General James P. Eisenhower III, not related to the other one, is he?
No, different spelling.
Not an Eisenhower. Okay. Major General James P. Eisenhower III. Also, wipe this name away.
James P.
James P. Eisenhower III. Oh. He says that troops need to be better about adulting, and that's why they're living in shitty barracks. The general wants to be clear. He meant that negatively. Eisenhower made the remarks on Wednesday at the panel at the Association of the U.S. Army Conference, where he and Lieutenant General Omar J. Jones V. Look
this
at
conference, by the way, hate to interject there, Kate. This conference, the main subject was how to get people to stay in and how to increase recruiting. That was the entire keynote conversation at this place. And this is what the general says.
I bet it was. And I guess if you have Roman numerals at the end of your name, you're just an absolute asshole. So Eisenhower III and Jones V took questioning from the crowd.
It's the
fourth. Whatever, IV, whatever IV is.
Yeah, lots of numbers.
One soldier who asked about military housing. There are some areas that are still dilapidated, the soldier asked. How do we avoid being on the Army Times, mold, asbestos, and so forth? And again, we have covered troops that were in barracks in freezing cold winter with no hot water for years. Troops that had so much mold that it affected their respiratory systems for the rest of their lives. Sick children, families getting fucked with. This shit is real. And
they had to rent out houses for basic training recruits in San Antonio. Remember that they had to get hotels and have everybody move off the base so they can, not everybody, but in a lot of the barracks so that they could do a deep, thorough cleaning. And that was after San Antonio News covered it every day for a week.
And there's a difference between a dirty barracks and one that is, I've walked into some and had to stay in some just temporarily as you move across the Corps or whatever, where you're like, this is literally fucking possible. There's no way I maybe bring in an emergency 911. There's a chemical spill on the road. Those kind of professional government people to come in. Outside of that, there's no way I can fix this with the cheap, shitty shit you give us. Anyway, I do use this in a pejorative term, and it's adulting, he told the crowd at AUSA. But a lot of times we just need to teach young soldiers and young family members what is appropriate and what is part of their obligation and basic responsibility as an adult. Tell me you're the most out-of-touch motherfucker without telling me you're the most out-of-touch motherfucker, you condescending dickhead. Holy fuck.
Saying that you mean it pejoratively, that you mean it to insult and demean, Like, are you kidding me, dude? Like, that's
When we're
your
talking
meaning?
about
Like,
troop retention,
like that's something a first sergeant says in front of the barracks and before field day. Like, he says that you guys need to be adult and clean your
yeah.
room. Hearing that from your major general after you have voiced concerns about the quality for your soldiers and how they're living at the conference where they're trying to increase retention, just insanity. If I was the chief of staff of the Army, I think I would come out and rebuke what he said. Like, I think I would say that's not appropriate. We realize that this is a real problem, and we are requesting billions of dollars of Congress to rectify it because our troops need it. Like, you go up there and say that kind of thing and then put it into action. That's the kind of thing that gets on the news, that you've solved these problems, that you're solving sexual assault, that you're solving the suicide things, the big issues that troops say they don't want to be retained. Fix them, dude. Like, fix them.
Exactly. Mold has been an increasing and major issue with enlisted soldiers. Fort Stewart, Fort Liberty, just Google Fort Stewart mold and you'll see what we're talking about. Eisenhower pointed to,
and it goes on and on. That's basically the story, and we don't have to go far. Anybody that listens to this show, anybody associated within the military community, knows that housing has been a problem, and it's been my dad and my stepdad were both in. It was a problem when they lived in Sicanella, Sicily in 1984. It's a problem now, and I imagine it was a problem whenever people came home from World War I, World War II. It's always been an issue. And having people that are in positions to affect it, like a 2-star and a 3-star general, commanders of entire divisions, commanders of entire bases, to really look down on that is bad. It's just bad.
Yeah. One thing I will say, though, the Secretary of the Army, she said one thing they are exploring is leveraging private housing for soldiers. So they go outside of a base, and there's an apartment complex, and they lease, 100 of the units to use for soldiers. And then that building is obviously maintained by that private company. Because I think what we have here,
that's essentially what base housing is too.
Well, yeah, exactly. But what you have here with a lot of this base housing is that it's so old. And I'm not a contractor, and I was actually talking about that earlier this morning. So I don't know the intricacies of what would need to be done, but it almost seems like you need to just knock these buildings down, start all over. And that obviously takes time. So they're trying to figure out some workarounds. Yeah, and money. Because I think they recognize that this is not a sustainable approach to have people live with mold. And again, like mold comes from moisture and water, and I don't think that has anything to do with humidity. I think you can.
I think it has everything to do with build a new barracks that's not from 1932 that has an HVAC system in it.
Yeah, that would be sweet. Yeah,
just build. Yeah. So, and it's like, it does take time and money, but we're the U.S. military. Like, we can build a bridge in some jungle in 20 minutes if we fucking have to. Figure it out. Figure it out. And especially if you're crying about retention, then buddy, figure it out. I feel like.
And you're crying about money, crying about budgets. This could be a form of preventative care, because people have, and they will continue to develop lung issues and all kinds of different issues because of the quality of the barracks. And you've seen it in Camp Lejeune and Pearl Harbor and Kadena Air Base. You see it all over the place. It might save you money as a country overall.
Yeah, on the back end. That's a good point.
Yeah. And more than just to close it out, they did a study across the Army. They went into every single barracks. More than 6,700 barracks were marked as poor and failing condition. And I bet you most of them have troops that are, I'll say it, struggling to live in them. It sucks. So, yeah.
And think the mold and the effects on your lungs. We know that black mold and mold in the air in general affects your lungs. That affects the individual readiness too. If your people can't breathe enough, that lowers PT scores, it lowers proficiencies on rucks and all those things. I would say your lungs are one of the most important parts of being a solid, in shape service member. I've seen fatsos that can run and they have good lungs and they can keep their breath and things like that. To me, that's very important, to have your troops actually be able to breathe. And when you breathe, you sleep, you're more rested, it's better for your brain. All those things are interconnected. Nothing exists in a vacuum.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll say too, like, sorry, just the last thing, just the way the nature of the leadership works in the military, like these generals, they're going to move on 2 to 3 years, right? They move on and it's no longer their problem. So this needs to be a problem that's addressed at the highest levels and then filtered down. Like I understand that those folks, they have responsibilities for those 2-3 years that they're in command, but I think this is a problem that's going to take longer than 2 or 3 years to fix. So we need those higher levels. So like to hear the secretary give a better answer, let's say, about maybe solutions that they're exploring, I think that's more encouraging.
Yeah. General Eisenhower, you have the worst shift of fire watch unless you go spend a week in the worst inhabited barracks right now. Go do it.
I think he should do fire watch there. I think that's where he should do fire watch.
Go do fire watch at the worst
01 to
moldiest
04.
barracks and tell us it's adulting. But yeah.
All right, let's move on to round number 2. What do we have here, Catherine?
Okay. Americans, hear me out. You're not going to believe this. Agreeing on something.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Americans agreeing on something. Look at us.
Nice. Way to go, guys. Yay.
Yes. Very encouraging. The results of a recent poll about mandatory national service were surprising and encouraging. It turns out that more than 2/3 of Americans support a program of mandatory national service for all 18 to 22-year-olds. And Chap says, I know this because I sponsored a survey on the subject. So you did. How did it go?
It went pretty well. It was like 66% of the people said that they really liked it. That's about it, Kate. It was a real simple Twitter question.
Oh, great. Well, I'm going to take that.
Very official Twitter poll.
I love it. Well, the program description and question was posed as this. And this isn't Chaps's question and proposal. This was a general one to Americans at a bigger poll. Would you support or oppose the following? All
it was
citizens,
a Gallup poll, if that's what you're looking for.
A Gallup poll. It was an official one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a Chapsy poll. Nope. All citizens and permanent residents, green card holders, would be required to participate in an 18-month national service program. Service could start anytime between the 18th and 22nd birthday, and service would include healthcare assistance, infrastructure and environmental repair, early childhood education programs, elder care assistance, or military service. So you wouldn't have to necessarily go into the military. You could help. There's a child care crisis in this country. There's a crisis with our care for the elderly, all different things. Basically, military or volunteerism for 18 months.
I really love it.
Yeah. National service participants shall receive a free room and board and an allowance. So $10,000 upon completion of those 18 months. People who fail to successfully complete their national service obligation would not be eligible for federal student loan or a mortgage guarantee program. But they're saying if you do your 18 months between age 18 and 22, you get $10,000, help with your college loans, probably something that looks good on your resume and some life experience, I would think, and a better frame of reference. 19-year-old Kate was doing beer bongs from inside a lamp and doing God knows what else. I probably could have been better planting trees in a national park somewhere. You know? Today, 75% of all young people 18 to 24 support that idea.
That was the most shocking part, is the people that it would affect. Because typically when you're like military draft, people that are 27 and younger are like, hell no. Like, we don't want to do that shit. And people that are like 60 are like, yeah, sure, whatever, it's fine. This is that 75% people want to do it in that age group. Crazy. Like that 75% of people don't agree on shit.
Yeah. Right. But I think it's important to note, like, the other options, it's not just military service. Whereas, like, we talked about Israel earlier, where you have to go do military service in that country for a year, I think is what it is. Because I think there are so many things that would be included in this that I think a lot of people would love to do at some point in their life that they don't explore because they're like, it doesn't pay anything, or I'm in college and I don't have time. It's stuff that people, I think, would want to do. And I think that's where you're seeing a lot of this positive response, is that it's not like, hey, go dig ditches for 18 months.
Mhm.
Obviously there is infrastructure included in that, but maybe that is part of it. But it's these endeavors that I think are very rewarding that people skew away from. I think largely due to the fact that they don't want to do something that doesn't really pay that well. But I do think, and Kate, you're a good example of this, how much you change from like your first stint in college versus your second stint in college, because you had after the military, and you had all those life lessons that you learned and probably not even realize that you were learning them at the time. And I think, I think Barstool is a great microcosm for this, because Dave likes to talk about the people who come to Barstool and it's their first ever job, and the way they view things at Barstool and the way they act is a little different than when you see the people who have had real jobs prior to Barstool and the fake life that Barstool is. And there's a drastic difference there. And I think that's exactly what you would see here.
Yeah, I think that's a great
I
point.
think, and for like me, I think that my connection to America is stronger based on service. And like, you want the success of your country, and you want to hold your country accountable for the fuck ups that it makes, because you served, you had an active role in trying to make it a better place and a better country for your kids. I think doing elderly care and learning compassion and seeing the struggle of other people, helping on infrastructure, the roads, being teachers' assistants, doing all of those things that aren't really like the most glamorous jobs in the world, but are incredibly needed. And when you get out of college, a lot of folks don't have any real direction at 22, 23. Doing that year or two of service, getting a steady paycheck, having the ability to have the student loans, which I would argue that you should make it like a GI Bill type of thing for those folks too, where you get your college paid for, not just student loans availability. I think you should be able to do it. But there's certain things that make the country better. And you get the $10,000. $10,000 at the end in cash helps people out, especially if you allow them to do not just only get a federal secured loan, but do something like a zero down payment thing that the GI Bill does, or the VA loan. I mean, those are the huge incentives. The country would be in a better place if we did something like that. I really believe that. Maybe not right away, but in 20 years, that would pay dividends.
There's one other part to this that I full-heartedly agreed with, because again, my own personal military experience, and it's so 65% of all those polled think the country's too divided and would benefit from a common experience.
Yeah.
And I know that I lived in a little bubble. I never left the tri-state area until I joined the military. I saw my first real cactus and real palm tree at age 22 when I finally went to California. For the first time in my life, everyone in my unit was from a different state, from a different place, different beliefs, religions, backgrounds. Like, as corny and cliche as it sounds, it's true. And you form a bond that is so strong with so many of them that, do I talk to them every day? No. But we still, you follow them on social media, you track their lives. So many of them, I couldn't disagree with more on all sorts of different things. But I still also now have the experience to know that, I understand where people are coming from better, because people that I love and care for, I don't know, it just really opened my mind in ways that made me less critical and more open to at least hearing people out, or at least understanding where people come from, because it got me out of my own bubble.
Yes, it gave you a perspective. Massive perspective. Like, I'm so grateful that I had a chance to live in another part of the country and see what other people are like in a different part of the same country. And I also think, Kate, have either of you ever met a veteran? Like, certainly you're not best friends with every veteran you ever met, but you, I think, are at least able to have a conversation and you can kind of connect with, just because of that shared experience, where you're like, oh, I like that person, where there's not that immediate, oh, I don't like that person because they're from Texas.
I think my old buddies, we have such a wide range of beliefs and politics and feelings. If you got us all together tomorrow night and put us in a garage with a bunch of beers and pretend I already had this baby, we would do nothing but laugh and have a good time. I don't know. And I think a lot of people are missing that in their life, that. get out of your bubble. And so I think that's
there's some
part
I'm
of
gonna
it.
mess up the statistic, but there's some statistic that it's like 85% of people end up living like within 5 miles of where they grew up, and that's fine ultimately, I guess. But think about how much better off we all are having just done other things and seen other people. And obviously, like I'm moving back to
Ladies,
where
think
I'm
of all
from.
the penises out there. It's
Yeah.
not this tri-state area.
And
I've
isn't
never
it-
had Colorado dick before. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like you tell it.
Yeah. And different foods. I mean, I don't know. It's just,
Yeah.
I just think there's the benefits far outweigh the negatives with this program. And to Chaps's point, we would be so much better off as a country if everybody had to go through some sort of program like this.
Yeah. He might be frozen, but I'm just going to pretend he loves everything we're saying and I'm totally into it. So,
well,
I don't know.
If something happens with this recording, just everybody tweet it, All Business Pete, because it's ultimately his fault.
Totally fine. Moving into the new office finally in Chicago, where Chaps is recording from right now is the old office. And there's 1 million people crammed into a small space. Internet.
Oh, that's why the internet stinks. It's just everybody's fighting for that same internet.
All right, let's move on to some save rounds and alibis. Cons, we'll start with you. What do you got?
Oh, man, I got two quickly. So I am perturbed, disappointed, disheartened.
Oh.
And it's probably just because of the fact that we all have cell phones now. But the amount of fights that happen at NFL stadiums is so bad. And it seems like they're just getting worse in terms of injuries. Like I see these people connecting with these sucker punches this weekend. And it's like, do you not comprehend? You punch someone, they hit the ground. If they have a serious injury, you could go to jail. Like, or if they die, like that's manslaughter for what? Because they're wearing the other team's jersey. It's obviously it's always fueled by alcohol, 99 times out of 100, but it's just so stupid to me. It's like, and obviously the more we share them, the more people are going to just continue to take their phones out and show everybody. I don't know.
I bet it's been happening forever. And you're right that phones have just made it. TikTok too, like everything video based has just made it worse. I think if you sucker punch, worse punishment. Like you just punch somebody in the face, you get a little bit, whatever. But if you sucker punch, it should be an escalator.
Yeah. It just also too, no one, I can promise you to everybody listening or seeing this clip right now, no one in the NFL ever said to themselves, my God, thankfully that fan was fighting for our honor in the stands today. They do not care at all. And everyone's like, well, we pay their salaries and their contracts. It's like, they don't care. I promise
no, you don't.
Mansions and they're like,
and no, you don't.
Yeah. They do not care.
TV contracts pay their salaries for the most part.
Yeah, ticket sales.
It's not gate.
Hail in comparison to the ticket, the TV rights and the sponsorship. So these people I just think that's something we need to eradicate. And then lastly, I was walking this morning with pushing the stroller, and I have a pretty decent pace, but it's certainly slower than if I wasn't pushing a stroller. This mom behind me, I think she was late to daycare, and the sidewalk was too narrow. She couldn't pass. And I looked, so I got off to the side when I could, and she passed me and she goes, oh, finally, thanks. Like she was pissed. She was pissed that I was blocking the sidewalk.
Damn.
Be on the lookout.
I will say, early parent, you never know what kind of morning they had.
Right.
It could have been an absolute shit show. Halfway there, had a little blow up the back.
That makes me want to fight. How can you see how can you see that sweet little bean in her stroller, Gonz's daughter, and want to be rude?
Yeah. And she was looking all cute in her little onesie fleece thing this morning. I'll send you guys a picture.
And I'll say it.
They better be glad Maggie didn't give her the what for.
Exactly. I know. Maggie probably said kick rocks was probably her first words.
She said, excuse me, ma'am. I don't appreciate that language. That's exactly what she said. Yeah.
And getting ready for daycare and stuff is tough in the morning. And we're late all the time. I mean, look, it's me. Okay. But every single time we've been late, that's on us. Okay. Like I could have gotten us started earlier and realized like, hey, it takes an extra hour to do anything. So shame on that lady. Who am I to late shame? But I'm late shaming her. How rude.
So be on the lookout on the streets. That's it. That's all I got.
Katie?
Nothing crazy here. I told Chaps as he was leaving because the internet connection was bad at the office. I was like, I think I maybe had a couple contractions starting.
I fully expect Kate to have the baby on the yak. I think it's going to be a live stream baby.
I agree. I agree. And it's funny. I swear to God, for the last month, Alex has been like, wait, when is Kate doing? For a month, every time she asks, I don't know. I think like 2 weeks. I have no idea when you're due.
My cousin was like, I feel like you've been pregnant with this baby since before you were pregnant with your last baby. Like, dude, just get it over with. Like, this has been the longest shit ever, dude. What the fuck?
Well, you did get the option of ending this whole thing.
Not in the way you think. Don't worry. We're talking about an induction.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's too late for that now, chaps. But
yikes.
Katie, getting dark there. Yeah, so I have the option of a C-section or an induction, and I still don't want either of those. I don't. If I could magically snap my fingers and have them just appear in my arms, I would do that option instead.
Can I say something? As a society in 2023, and believe me, what women go through for childbirth is unbelievable. I could never. How have we not figured out a better way at this point?
That's what I'm saying.
How is there not a better way?
Pull it out of my belly button.
Yeah.
I saw something the other day that blew my mind science-wise.
We're
the only mammals in the entire animal kingdom that when the offspring arrives, that it cannot walk, cannot do anything. Do you guys know the reason why evolutionary, why we can't do it?
Big brains, the heads are too heavy.
No.
I would just say because as humans, we just like to make things more complicated for ourselves than they need to be with everything.
It's because we're bipedal. We're one of the only mammals that are totally bipedal. Like you walk on
2 feet. Okay.
Yeah, 2 feet instead of having down. Earlier humans are like our ancestor of humans were more bent over. And because you stand straight up, the hips and pelvises on humans aren't wide enough to support all the internal organs, because in an animal it goes down so their bellies can support, but it won't work that way for humans. It just completely falls out, and then you have to go to a specialist like Kate did a couple weeks ago to keep all your insides inside. Yep. That's the reason why human babies
pelvic floor PT. I put a little glow belt around my flaps.
They have to get bigger pelvises.
Sorry, I guess not to get too graphic here, but something I didn't realize until I was going through this whole process with Alex, I didn't realize with a C-section, I thought like they just went in, brought the baby out, and that was it. No. They take like a whole bunch of other stuff out and like put it aside. They're like, we'll get back to that. They take the baby out and then they put all your insides back in.
They like rest your organs. That's what I'm afraid of.
Feels primitive.
Okay.
Yes.
So anyway, now I don't think they're real. I think you get the fake ones. So I think it was a false alarm, but I had like 4 of them and they were kind of evenly apart. I was taking notes on my phone and then they kind of went away. So
you're pretty close at this point though, right?
I'm 38 weeks.
Okay. Yeah. That's when we went. So
yeah.
I say we.
How do they know that? How do they know that exactly?
Oh, I know the exact. I know ours exactly.
Yeah. All right, I'll go. So there's this dude, Cons. I know you're not a TikTok guy, right, Cons?
No.
Do you have one that you scroll or anything?
I see a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't post them or anything.
No.
But there's this dude who's in England, and I am obsessed with him. He is he's like what is it called whenever you teach people how to eat at a restaurant and how to use your fork and stuff like that? What?
No, hold on. An etiquette coach.
Etiquette. Yeah, he's an etiquette coach. Yeah, he's like an etiquette specialist. And he's the fanciest fucking dude of all time.
Yeah.
He goes, whenever we're out and about and we enjoy a delicious ice cream, We don't walk around like Neanderthals. We stand there, we enjoy our ice cream, and then we move about on our way. Whenever we are sitting and making our beds up, which we should do, we don't put the flaps of the pillows on the outside. We act like we're in a civilized society and move them on the inside. No one wants to see your flaps of your pillow at any time. And did you guys know this? This one blew my mind. If you're eating mussels, Kate, I'm not sure if you've ever eaten mussels. When you're eating mussels, how do you do it?
Well, I mean, geez, I have a mussels and clams recipe that it's pretty much only in the summer that we do it. And it usually ends up, because it's outside barbecue, people are getting primitive with it. You know, hands, we have a sauce that you dip the bread in with. I have to imagine it's not how you're about to describe, because I don't really ever.
Are you cracking it open? What are you doing? Like, and not the preparation, it's just the eating portion.
So the mussels, they open while they're on the grill. So they're opened enough that you can just open it with your hands and get to the mussel and use like a fork.
Yeah. So etiquette, not fork. You use the fork on the very first one. Then you pop open that mussel, the shell, and you use them as pinchers to get it out of the next one. So they have a built-in utensil. That's the appropriate way to do it. And another one, I'm telling you, I'm obsessed with this dude. Sushi. Do you guys dip your sushi in soy sauce? You don't eat sushi again, Kate. You do?
So,
you eat sushi, Kate?
Sweet potato, deep fried sweet potato sushi.
That
I love it.
See, I think I use very little soy sauce, if any, because I think soy is such an overpowering taste.
It is.
That I prefer to just have the fish and taste the actual fish that I'm eating. But sometimes I'll dip it. And
whenever you dip it, the rice comes apart. You know.
Oh, like it's a mess.
He says, etiquette-wise, whenever you're eating sushi, you take the chunk of sushi, you flip it over with your chopsticks, and you dip the fish instead of the rice. So then it's, like Khan said, it's not overpowering. And you have the rice that cuts, like that absorbs some of that flavor instead of the rice soaking it all up.
That makes sense.
Game changer.
Yeah.
Game changer. Yeah, I love this guy.
Ladies and gents at the Barracks, use these tips if you want those panties and boxers dropping.
That's exactly right.
I tell you what, though.
When he sees you flip your sushi, ladies, he's gonna
be like, what? I will say, as far as etiquette goes, there's so many rules out there that if you just follow etiquette by the letter of the law, some of the stuff is absolutely ridiculous. So I'd be interested to see who this guy is, chaps, and I want to check out some more things, because there's probably all sorts of things that we do wrong as a society that we don't even know.
You know, as we move forward, and Kate is out for a little while because she's having human. We need to just bring this. Maybe I could get the guy on the show.
That'd be awesome.
Teach us a little bit of etiquette. And two, if not, I'll play the videos for cons and we can break it down to see if we think it's necessary or not. Did you have a notification, Kate?
That just scared the shit out of me.
And not because it's like the podcast. I don't care. I'm just shocked, like, that somebody your age has your phone notification on.
Like sounds. Yeah, that's wild. Right. I haven't used sounds on my phone. I can't tell you the last time. Probably since I had a BlackBerry.
It's this new Chicago parking app. It honks at you like a semi truck when your car is about to be ticketed.
I mean, I don't hate that. I don't hate that.
It scared the shit out of me.
Parking tickets are the most annoying thing, because the cost of parking is minimal, and then if you get a ticket, it's 25x. So
I will say, back to the etiquette, how he said don't walk and eat your ice cream. In the military, at least in the Marine Corps, you don't walk and eat. You don't walk and chew gum.
Oh,
you
that's
don't walk
true.
and talk on your cell phone.
Oh, and that's an etiquette thing too. That's one that he talks about, Kate, is walking and talking.
There's certain things that have always stuck with me. To this day, at least before kids, I still couldn't walk and smoke a cigarette, and I couldn't walk and eat. And even now with Pat, when we get a coffee or whatever, every time I go to sip or whatever, I'm like, stop. I like make us stop, because I like physically can't walk and do these things anymore, because it was so fucked in my head. And he's like, what? Why you can't sip a coffee and walk? I'm like, no, I prefer to be stationary. Thanks. Like I feel like
in a lot of Asian countries, they follow a lot of those where they won't walk and do things at the same time. Do you remember that from Okinawa at all, chaps?
No, not that specifically, no. But I know I was never super observant or pay attention to what like local nationals were doing.
Yeah.
Really.
For some reason, I just someone maybe told me that along the way. I've never been to
Minus the little kids being able to go across the highway just by throwing their little dicks. Nope, by throwing their hands up in the air.
That was a good catch. That was a good catch.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, we'll be back next week. Maybe Kate. I doubt Kate will, honestly. I think
No, I bet I
this is
will.
it.
I bet I will.
No, let's get you want to give a goodbye for a couple weeks?
No, because
Months.
if I do that, then I'll definitely be back next week. And I want this thing. Sorry, this gentleman, love you. I want him out of me. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
I bet. All right. We'll be back next week. We'll see you then. Silent retreat. Wait, we don't even have a retreat. I've been saying that. I haven't put a single retreat in since we've been.
It's all right.
since
We
Nick's been
need
gone.
to be consistent.
I'll
People
just
are
do
expecting
it.
to hear it. Isn't that the girl from Ipanema?
Mhm.
See,
See, if that general from earlier in the show wanted to really impress people, what he would do, that song for retreat at the end of the day. Imagine the reaction. Chief Warrant Officer Bobby Yarbo would have an absolute field day if that happened.
certainly would.
All right, we'll see you next time. No retreat.